Okay, so where were we? Last video, I went over the MVP of my dream game, an offshoot of the 4X genre with unit customization mechanics like you see in Pokemon. The only problem was, my design fell flat. It had lost the magic that drove me to develop it in the first place. The gameplay was just too clunky, and the visual design was not cutting it. So how did I fix that? Well, I completely rebooted the game. Same concept, but with new and more streamlined mechanics and a completely different art style. That particular style of pixel art wasn't detailed enough, and I was ready to try something drastically new. So I gave low poly 3D modeling a try. I even changed the programming language and library. Goodbye, nim and raylib, hello, Java and libgdx. I was so proud of the mod loading system I had designed for the prototype, but I'm far more familiar with Java than I am nim, and I figured most future modders would say the same. So I rebuilt the project from scratch, using what I learned in the prototype to push development even faster than before. I stumbled through the 3D version of Hello World, which is just rendering a cube in space. I've dipped my toes in 3D graphics programming several times before, so thankfully it didn't take very long. The logic for the map, units, and the menu UI weren't tricky, but then I realized I had to implement user input in 3D this time. I had spent one evening on the math behind player input for the prototype. The user clicks somewhere on the screen, and the game just has to calculate which hexagonal tile was clicked on. I achieved this by splitting up the game world into horizontal ribbons that would help determine the bounds of each hexagonal tile. Whichever ribbon was clicked would determine the next logic to find the hexagon's map coordinates. This was more complicated in 3D, since the player clicks on a 2D plane that doesn't at all align with the surface of the world. It took 3 days, but eventually I found the function that saved my life. libgdx provides a method that casts a ray from a point and allows you to get any intersecting points along that ray. I simply cast a ray from the point on the click plane, and then got the point on that ray that intersects with the surface of the world. Then that point is run through my ribbon logic, and we're back on the road. Now, 3D graphics are great, but I do not know how to 3D model. Well, I do a little bit, but nowhere near the 3D games you see nowadays. However, there are 3D games from way back when that I know I could model. So I taught myself how to use Blockbench. Blockbench is a low-poly 3D modeling program that's commonly used for Minecraft mods. I figured I could slap a nice custom toon shader on top of some low-poly models and get something unique but visually appealing. My first few models were rough, but I'm steadily getting better at it. I got a lot of inspiration from an artist called Luke Humphries. He's an excellent animator and storyteller on this site, and his work is a good blend of cozy, surreal, and nostalgic. I especially like his bold line work, cell shading, and little scratch mark details. I'll try to implement elements of that in this game's new art direction. This particular short is my favorite. This right here is the reason I ride my bike shirtless in the rain, just to get a hint of the vibes exuded by this animation. There's also an artist on Instagram named Salamander King, who inspired the game's visual direction. I especially love his character designs from the Maze Dweller series, and hope to capture some of that in my own units. His Maze Dweller designs look like if someone took the level of detailing from late season Adventure Time backgrounds and applied them to conceptually unique character designs. I just love the shape language and colors in his designs so much. I also studied art from Adventure Time, The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, and the French comic artist Mobius. A YouTuber called Useless Gamedev has a video on emulating Mobius' style using shader code. It's a great example of art programming, and I encourage any engineers in my audience to go watch it. The last part of my redesign was to streamline the mechanics. The party system had to go. It was clunky and overcomplicated. I changed it to be max 1 unit and 1 building per tile at all times. In the prototype, players would get new units by completing quests. Each tile might have its own quest like defeat X number of this enemy, or slay a boss, or gather some special item. Real RPG tasks. I didn't like this anymore because it would tie these new units as rewards for the quests. But I didn't know how to make those units visible at a glance to the player. They would have to click on a tile to see what unit they could earn, let alone their strengths and weaknesses. If I tie unit recruitment into the world, then it needs to be telegraphed better. Otherwise, the player needs some mechanism that allows them to choose their next unit strategically. My solution? Players gain a resource called unit points each turn. When they hit 100 unit points, they can select from a pool of available units. This gives them some choice, and they don't need to be able to see it from the map because the pool is randomly selected when a player hits 100 points. During my redesign phase, I wrote out all the major mechanics in a matrix and designed interactions with checks and balances between each of them. I didn't want a single mechanic to feel disconnected, out of place, under or overpowered. I also wanted to include some more out there concepts and make them coherent in the game. An example of this is blind auctioning, which I got the idea from the Adventure Time parody episodes of Magic the Gathering.
Simulated combat, hand management, commodity speculation, worker placement, blind auctioning, and set collection.
How does commodity speculation and blind auctioning work in a card game? I'm not sure, but I'll lift auctions for my game and make it fit in with combat, unit recruitment, resource gathering, etc. Auctions are a way for players to win powerful prizes that last the rest of the game. There is a global resource called auction points, and when it hits a certain number, an auction starts. Each player can either decline the auction or pay a percentage of their total gold to enter it. Each player in the auction bets a certain amount of resources. The player who bet the most wins the auction and gets to choose a prize, which is called an artifact. The artifacts have global effects that benefit their owner for the rest of the game. I envision this mechanic to be a counter towards brute force offensive strategies. Part of the motivation for disparate yet coherent mechanics is to increase the potential design space for units. Units are the player's main interface into the world. The player modifies the world through unit actions like move or different spells. In other 4X games, you have many units that specialize in different combat roles, and maybe 1 or 2 units for each of the other main mechanics. Sometimes those other mechanics are optional, and combat is usually hyperfixated on. I would like the freedom to design units that specialize in a variety of mechanics without any combat ability. Of course, I'd have combat-centric units too, but they wouldn't be the vast majority. I have to consider unit design space as a meta resource when designing this game. I'm going to maintain what I like about the Pokemon series by designing a wide array of units, and I don't want them to be mechanically redundant. I just cannot support a large unit design space built on top of shallow mechanics. And with all that, the redesign was finally complete, and I had a new demo to work with. It was incredible. I felt the magic again, but something was still missing. I had a friend playtest it, and to be fair, there were some heavy user interface issues. Nothing that warrants another redesign, of course. I am getting closer to my dream game, but I still need to tweak several things. But that's a video for another time. Stick around if you'd like to follow this project. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.